organisms then feed off of it. So different types of producers, and these producers are using photosynthesis to convert sunlight to energy, and would be producers. Miss a C there. This right here is eukaryotic algae. And this last one is cyanobacteria. Okay, so bacteria that can photosynthesize and that cannot produce useful energy, heterotrophs, and three basic types. Consumers, just like regular consumers, saprotrophs, and detritivores. Okay, so heterotrophic organisms. All right, so plants. You can put grass, and maybe put a pine tree. Eukaryotic algae. I'm sure some of you have heard of kelp before. These giant kelp forests in the ocean, 40 to 60 feet tall, all sorts of life growing in them in the ocean. And another one, much smaller, diatoms. Consumers, humans, us. Say man's best friend, dog, although cats are really nice too. Saprotrophs, bacteria, and fungi, like we saw over on the pumpkin the other day. Had that nice IB logo, and then turned into just a little pile of rotted remains there, and then detritivore, something that's eating dead stuff. So that would be coyote times, and sturgeon. It's a fish, long-living fish, sometimes 400 years old, that feeds off stuff at the bottom of the ocean, and might say vultures too. We often think of them as eating dead organisms, converted into light energy into chemical energy by photosynthesis. Now, energy is not made by plants. I hear that a lot, that plants make energy, but they're not making it. They're taking sunlight and making the chemical energy, so it's really converted. They're converting energy, and producers use their chemical energy to make things like carbohydrates. Let's run out of room. Lipids and other molecules like we might want to put. Can you guess it? Proteins. And that energy from producers then can go on to consumers. So producer goes to consumer, and then the one consumer go to primary consumer, often marked like that, and then to a secondary consumer, and then tertiary consumer. Usually between 2 and 5 organisms in the food chain, and remember, 90% is lost. Okay, 10% remains going through. And the arrows, whenever you have food chain, like we have grass to a cow to a human, this arrow shows energy flow. Okay, so we have a nice food web right here. We can look at how many, what feeding level. So copepod, it's eating just the phytoplankton, so it's definitely that primary consumer. Now we go to the penguin right here. When it eats the krill that eats the phytoplankton, it's at a secondary level. If it eats the carnivorous plankton that ate the copepod, it would be at the tertiary level. Carnivorous plankton would be at the secondary level. It's 2 steps up. Primary. Let's look at the humans here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It can eat the 5th level if it goes from humans to the seals to the squid. Although I don't think we eat a whole lot of seals. But if we ate the sperm whale that ate the squid, it would still be that 5th level. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. And this toothed whale, let's look. If it ate this bird, it would be at the 4th level. Oh, hey Kelly, what's up?
Can you show us the...
And let's see, these baleen whales. It looks like they're eating the krill. They're a secondary consumer. So that's pretty, something that big, subsisting on just those primary consumers, that's pretty impressive, these tiny krill. Pretty cool. Okay, so maybe we'll label a leopard seal here. So leopards, squids here can be secondary or tertiary if they're eating the carnivorous plankton, so that would make the leopard seal quaternary. Okay. Oh, maybe the fish is here. Secondary there too. That looks good. Okay, so synthesizing large organic molecules, very similar RNA, you might guess, DNA, and proteins is our other large molecule that we'll be looking at. As our bodies are functioning and they are, making things, staying alive. One thing we have to do is the pumping molecules across membranes to move things into our cells that we need. And sometimes we need to go against the concentration gradient. So instead of everything goes from high low concentration without energy, but to go from a low concentration to a high concentration, we need active transport. So active transport, I'll make a note, using energy. And then your cells is pretty cool. They have basically like truck proteins and highways to move things around to where they need to go. And something that might need to be moved are things like chromosomes, especially when their cells are dividing, they need to be organized. Muscle cells, of course, always using, they use a lot of energy and they make heat. And when those protein fibers are contracting. And exothermic reactions release heat. Oxidation reactions, which we'll get into later. To make ATP, which is the energy currency of your body. You gotta turn lipids or carbohydrates into ATP to power your cells. And so exothermic heat goes out, releases heat. There's another reaction that actually absorbs heat, and that's endothermic. And when things are being built. So exothermic, think of it breaking down stuff. And endothermic, you can think of this as building. And nothing's 100% efficient, and that's just the second law of thermodynamics. Okay, pretty cool bringing some physics into this, which of course leads to chemistry, and of course biology is based on that chemistry. Pretty cool. All right, exothermic reaction. Remember, we're releasing energy, things like combustion, burning things, and things like respiration. Now, this is not breathing, remember. This is cellular respiration. You know, making ATP essentially. And something you've seen, you leave metal out for long enough, it will rust. Okay, so endothermic reactions. All these things happen in chemistry more, but there's something right here very important for biology. And you think you can guess it? Photosynthesis is an endothermic reaction that we have. And then, of course, respiration, you know, breaking down. And remember, plants also use respiration. Okay, not just photosynthesis. Sometimes we forget that. All right, so this is a cool diagram. You can figure out, this is where energy is coming from here. Most of it, remember. This is the sun, and it's feeding this group of organisms, which should be our producers. And that energy is moving up to our primary consumers, which then leads up to our secondary consumers. I'll just abbreviate C, and then tertiary consumers. And try to figure out what these red marks are. This would be heat coming off of all these processes. All these organisms, as they respire, they're releasing heat. And then you see these blue arrows, whereas everything's coming back. You have these substances flowing also through the whole system. This would be, the blue arrows would be nutrients. Of course, the red is heat. Oh, and these boxes over here, all these things eventually fall into this box, and this would be dead stuff, or officially called detritus. Detritus. And there's something that specializes in feeding on those. That would be decomposers, like our saprotropes, okay, or detritivores. All right. So, light gets turned into chemical energy with photosynthesis. Here we got chemical energy to make muscle contractions turning into heat. Chemical for nerve cells turns into electrical energy. And then in fat tissue, we also get this heat, heat energy storing. So let me go back and just make an edit. Energy of movement and muscle contraction, that's called kinetic energy. K-I-N-E-C, kinetic energy. Okay, so heat is lost from all ecosystems, and it goes out into the environment. And they can warm their bodies with it or speed up metabolism. A little bit warmer, you can get more reactions, the molecules bang into each other faster. And if you can do that, you can live in colder climates, okay, moving north and south from the equator, and still get all the reactions working as they should. And this is interesting. Heat always passes from warmer bodies to cooler bodies. And you think about, if you're hot, you put ice on your forehead, it's not the coolness going into you, but it's the heat from your body going into that water. Or, water, either, solid or liquid, of that ice. Okay, so your heat is traveling out into the ice cube. Okay, so this is a nice little diagram, kind of a similar thing as we see with our food web diagram. We see the sun powering photosynthesis. These are producers of all type, and we got energy moving out. We see right here, this is heat. We see heat below, and the first level that gets that energy from the producers, these are our primary consumers. And over here, like the eagle eating here, would be secondary consumers. And then down here, eating all this dead stuff, detritus feeders or detritivores. So, energy losses.
Hey,
Yeah.
do you have any of those large?
Okay. Biomass. So, if you look at human biomass, total mass of a group of organisms. Oops. And it's calculated biomass per square meter. We're in international units here. And as you move from producers, all the consumers, the amount of energy decreases, which you may have figured out by now. And a lot of the reason is this energy is converted into heat that gets wasted. And we saw this we can think about the owl pellets that we just use. When the mouse eats grass, it doesn't go eat all of that grass, although maybe it would if it's really desperate, but that takes a lot of extra energy that might not really be worth it for the mouse. But the roots represent energy that's not being accessed or used. And the owl can't digest everything because we saw it. It regurgitates the bones and the hair in a pellet. And therefore, this is energy that just doesn't get used. But eventually does get broken down, the nutrients. In South America here, where we have this Amazon basin, and then we have oops. So high levels, Brazil, and we'll say the Congo. It's that main large country, Central Africa there, Indonesia. And areas, if we look back in it, you see Australia is low for the most part. The Middle East, so we'll say Saudi Arabia, and we'll say the U.S. Southwest. You'll see low levels of primary productivity. So the biggest influence abiotic, meaning non-living, would be water availability. All right, and this is just showing how you have a large decrease between trophic levels. Actually, this should be a little bit smaller. It should be more like this, because it's 10%, right? So it should be like that, like that, like that. But these aren't ingested. Okay, you don't even eat it, like the roots from the mouse. Losses heat from respiration.
Oh, I don't want to call it luck, because I did work for everything that I did for, like, I went to school